Hey, gorgeous souls, I'm Sarah, and I'm about to tell you the most satisfying workplace revenge story that turned my CEO's false accusations into the evidence that sent him to federal prison and how I used his own greed to expose a $3.2 million embezzlement scheme while saving my entire team's careers. When my CEO Richard publicly accused me and my 8-person accounting team of stealing $500,000 from our tech company, I didn't panic or resign. Instead, I spent 3 weeks secretly documenting his financial crimes and discovered he'd been embezzling millions while using us as scapegoats. When I presented my evidence to the board, Richard was arrested during the meeting while I was promoted to CFO of the company he almost destroyed. But here's where the CEO fraud revenge gets absolutely insane. Richard hadn't just been stealing money. He'd been planning to frame my entire team for his crimes, fire us all, and disappear to the Cayman Islands with $3.2 million in stolen funds. When I exposed his offshore accounts and fake vendor scheme, Richard lost everything while my team got bonuses and I got his corner office. This story has everything: false accusations, financial fraud, whistleblower protection, FBI investigations, and the kind of corporate justice that turned a CEO's attempted frame job into his own life sentence. Y'all ready for this corporate takedown? Because this is how being falsely accused of theft became the key to exposing the real criminal. Beautiful souls, let me take you back to 6 months ago when I thought CEO Richard Morrison was just demanding and difficult, completely unaware that he was stealing millions while planning to frame my accounting team for his crimes. I'm Sarah Chen, 34 years old, and I work as Senior Director of Finance at Touchflow Solutions, a rapidly growing software company in Seattle with 200 employees and $50 million in annual revenue. Richard Morrison, 52, was the founder and CEO who built Touchflow from a startup into a major player in business software development over 8 years. Richard is demanding but brilliant, employees would say about his leadership style. He drives everyone hard but gets results. I managed an 8-person accounting team responsible for financial reporting, accounts payable, and budget analysis for all company operations. Sarah's team handles millions in transactions flawlessly, Richard would tell investors. Their accuracy and efficiency are crucial to our growth. My team included experienced professionals: Lisa, accounts payable; Mark, financial analyst; Jennifer, payroll specialist, and 5 other dedicated accountants. We process over $4 million monthly in vendor payments and employee expenses. I would explain our responsibilities to new hires. Touchflow had been experiencing explosive growth, with revenue increasing 40% annually and plans for a potential IPO within 2 years. Our financial controls and reporting systems need to be perfect for investor scrutiny. Richard emphasized the importance of accurate accounting. My team had implemented comprehensive financial tracking systems that monitored every transaction and maintained detailed audit trails. Sarah's systems give us complete visibility into company finances. Our external auditors praised our meticulous record keeping. Over the past year, Richard had become increasingly demanding about expense approvals and questioned routine financial procedures. Why are we spending so much on vendor payments? Richard would ask about normal business expenses that had been previously approved. These consulting fees seem excessive. Richard complained about standard software development contracts that he'd personally negotiated. Richard also began requesting detailed reports about specific vendor relationships and payment histories that seemed unusual for C-level oversight. I need a complete analysis of our relationship with Cloud Tech Consulting. Richard would demand reports about routine technology vendors. Show me every payment we've made to Dataflow Services over the past 2 years. He'd request historical data that seemed oddly specific. I'd attributed Richard's increased scrutiny to his perfectionist personality and the pressure of preparing for potential IPO. Richard wants everything perfect for investor due diligence. I explained his behavior to my team. Richard had also begun working longer hours and seemed stressed about financial performance despite the company's strong growth. The pressure of leading a growing company is affecting Richard. I thought about his increased anxiety and micromanagement. Looking back, Richard's behavior suggested he was searching for vulnerabilities in our financial systems rather than ensuring their accuracy. 3 months ago, I began noticing small irregularities in vendor payments that didn't align with our standard procurement procedures. Why are we paying CloudTech Consulting twice for the same services? I asked Richard about duplicate payments in our system. That's a correction for previous underpayment. Richard explained dismissively. Sometimes vendors bill us for additional work that wasn't captured initially. Dataflow Services has been receiving significantly higher payments this quarter. I observed to Richard during our monthly financial review. They're providing expanded services for our growth initiatives, Richard said without providing documentation of the expanded scope. I also noticed that several new vendors had been added to our approved payment list without going through normal procurement approval processes. Who approved Advanced Tech Solutions as a vendor? I asked Richard about a company I didn't recognize. I handled that approval directly, Richard said. They provide specialized consulting that requires immediate implementation. The irregular payments totaled approximately $200,000 over 3 months, which seemed significant, but not alarming for a growing company. Richard is probably just managing growth initiatives that haven't been communicated to the finance team yet. I rationalized the irregularities. I documented the unusual payments in our standard financial reports but didn't investigate further. Until Richard's accusations forced me to examine everything more carefully. Gorgeous souls, Richard's accusations came during an all-hands company meeting when he publicly blamed my entire accounting team for financial irregularities that he'd actually created to cover his own theft. Last Monday, Richard called an emergency all-hands meeting to address what he claimed were serious financial irregularities discovered in our accounting department. I've uncovered evidence of significant financial misconduct in our finance team, Richard announced to all 200 employees. Approximately $500,000 in unauthorized payments have been processed by the accounting department, Richard claimed while staring directly at me. Sarah Chen and her team have been making payments to fake vendors and inflating legitimate expenses. Richard accused us of crimes we hadn't committed. The entire company sat in shocked silence as Richard detailed his false accusations against my team. Internal investigation shows systematic fraud designed to steal company funds. Richard continued his lies, effective immediately. The entire accounting team is suspended pending criminal investigation. Richard announced our punishment. Sarah Chen is terminated for gross misconduct and theft. Richard fired me publicly in front of my colleagues and friends. My team members looked devastated as they realized their careers and reputations were being destroyed by false accusations. This is impossible, Lisa whispered to Mark. We've never processed any unauthorized payments. I've been here for 5 years with a perfect record, Jennifer said quietly. How can Richard accuse us of theft? Richard's accusations were so specific and confident that some employees actually believed them despite knowing our team's integrity. After the meeting, Richard had security escort my entire team from the building while other employees watched in confusion and shock. Pack your personal items, security told us. You're banned from company property pending investigation. This has to be some kind of mistake, Mark said while cleaning out his desk. We've never done anything wrong. Richard has lost his mind, Lisa said angrily. These accusations are completely false. Word of the accusations spread quickly through our professional network, damaging our reputations before we could defend ourselves. Did you hear that Sarah's team was stealing from TouchFlow? Industry contacts began questioning our integrity. I can't believe Sarah would be involved in financial fraud. Former colleagues expressed shock about the accusations. Several team members received calls from worried family members who'd heard about the allegations through professional networks. My wife is devastated, Mark told me. She can't believe I'm accused of being a criminal. My kids are hearing about this at school, Jennifer said tearfully. Other parents are talking about the TouchFlow fraud case. The false accusations threaten to destroy not just our careers but our personal lives and family relationships. Richard announced that TouchFlow was cooperating with federal investigators to prosecute the financial crimes committed by my team. We're working with the FBI to ensure these criminals face the full legal consequences, Richard told employees. Federal fraud charges carry significant prison time. Richard warned other employees about the severity of the alleged crimes. My team and I received legal notices threatening criminal prosecution if we didn't cooperate with the company's investigation. You're facing federal charges for wire fraud and conspiracy, the legal notice stated. Cooperation may reduce potential sentences. Richard is trying to send us to federal prison for crimes we didn't commit. I realized the severity of his false accusations. Richard also froze our final paychecks and threatened to sue us for restitution of the allegedly stolen money. TouchFlow will pursue civil recovery of all stolen funds plus damages. Legal threats included financial ruin in addition to criminal charges. The legal pressure was designed to force us to accept blame and avoid challenging Richard's narrative about the missing money. Richard wants us to confess to crimes we didn't commit. I understood his strategy to avoid investigation of the real theft. Instead of panicking or accepting blame, I decided to investigate Richard's claims and find evidence of what really happened to the missing money. Beautiful souls. Investigating Richard's accusations led me to discover that he'd been systematically embezzling millions through fake vendors while preparing to frame my team for his crimes. I used my home computer to access TouchFlow's financial systems remotely, taking advantage of administrative privileges that Richard hadn't revoked yet. If $500,000 is really missing, I should be able to find exactly where it went, I thought while examining detailed transaction records. Every payment my team processed is documented with approvals and supporting paperwork. I knew our procedures had been followed correctly. Within hours, I discovered that the missing money had actually been paid to vendors that Richard had personally approved through override authorities. CloudTech Consulting received $180,000 in payments that Richard approved directly. The transaction logs showed his personal authorization. Dataflow Services was paid $150,000 for consulting work that Richard ordered without procurement approval. His fingerprints were on every suspicious transaction. Advanced Tech Solutions received $170,000 for projects that Richard managed personally. The pattern of his involvement was obvious. The vendors that Richard claimed were fake were actually companies that he'd established and controlled personally. CloudTech Consulting is registered to Richard Morrison's home address. Business registration records revealed his ownership. Dataflow Services lists Richard's brother-in-law as the primary contact. Family connections exposed a fraudulent vendor scheme. Richard had been stealing money by creating fake companies and approving payments to himself while my team processed legitimate paperwork. Further investigation revealed that Richard had been transferring stolen money to offshore accounts in preparation for disappearing permanently. Cayman Islands Bank shows wire transfers totaling $3.2 million from TouchFlow accounts. International banking records exposed the scope of his theft. Switzerland Private Banking received $1.8 million in transfers authorized by Richard Morrison. European accounts contained additional stolen funds. Richard has been systematically looting cash flow for over 2 years. The timeline of theft was much longer than anyone suspected. Richard had also purchased a luxury villa in Costa Rica using stolen company funds, planning his escape from prosecution. Property records show Richard Morrison purchased a $2 million estate in Costa Rica last month. Real estate documents revealed his escape plan. Private jet reservations show Richard scheduled to leave for Costa Rica tomorrow. Travel records indicated his imminent departure. Richard's plan was to frame my team for his crimes, disappear to a non-extradition country, and live luxuriously. On stolen money, Richard wasn't just stealing money. I realized he was planning to destroy 8 innocent people to cover his escape. The evidence showed that Richard's accusations against my team were a desperate attempt to create scapegoats for his massive embezzlement. I compiled comprehensive evidence of Richard's embezzlement scheme, including bank records, vendor registrations, and offshore account transfers. Richard Morrison has stolen over $5 million from cash flow through fraudulent vendor payments. My documentation proved the full scope of his crimes. The vendors he claimed were fake are actually companies he owns and controls. Business registrations exposed his ownership of the fraudulent vendors. My accounting team processed payments based on Richard's direct approvals and legitimate appearing documentation. Evidence showed our innocence. I also discovered that Richard had been planning the frame job for months, gradually building false evidence against my team. Richard modified historical transaction records to make legitimate payments appear suspicious. Digital forensics revealed his manipulation of financial data. He created fake email trails suggesting my team approved suspicious payments. Evidence showed his systematic framing attempt. The whistleblower evidence was comprehensive enough to prove Richard's guilt while completely exonerating my team. This evidence will send Richard to federal prison for decades. I realized the strength of the criminal case against him. I also documented Richard's planned escape, including property purchases and travel arrangements that proved his intent to flee prosecution. I contacted Touchflow's board of directors with my evidence, requesting an emergency meeting to expose Richard's crimes before he could escape. I have evidence that CEO Richard Morrison has embezzled over $5 million and is planning to flee the country. I told the board chairman, the accusations against my accounting team are false and designed to cover Richard's theft. I explained the frame job attempt. Richard is scheduled to leave for Costa Rica tomorrow with stolen company funds. I warned about his imminent escape. The board was initially skeptical but agreed to review my evidence during an emergency meeting scheduled for the next morning. If your allegations are true, we need to act immediately to protect the company. The chairman acknowledged the urgency. Richard has been systematically looting cash flow while planning to destroy 8 innocent employees. I emphasized both the financial and human costs of his crimes. The board meeting would determine whether Richard's frame job succeeded or whether justice would expose the real criminal. Tomorrow's meeting will either save my team or send us to federal prison for Richard's crimes. I understood the stakes completely. Gorgeous souls. The emergency board meeting became the most dramatic corporate confrontation when I presented evidence of Richard's theft while he tried to maintain his lies, leading to his arrest in the conference room. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 8 a.m. in Touchflow's main conference room with all 5 board members present. We're here to review serious allegations against CEO Richard Morrison. The board chairman announced the meeting's purpose. Richard attended the meeting confident that his frame job had succeeded and that the board would support his narrative. I'm glad we're addressing the financial fraud committed by Sarah's team, Richard said smugly. The evidence is overwhelming. Richard, we're actually here to review evidence that you've been embezzling company funds. The chairman corrected his assumption. Richard's confidence immediately shifted to panic as he realized his crimes had been discovered. That's ridiculous. Richard said desperately. Sarah is obviously trying to deflect attention from her team's theft. We'll review all evidence objectively, the chairman assured both of us while setting up presentation equipment. I had prepared a comprehensive presentation documenting Richard's embezzlement scheme, offshore accounts, and planned escape. Members of the board. Richard Morrison has stolen over $5 million from Touchflow. I began my presentation with the most damaging evidence. I systematically presented evidence of Richard's crimes, including vendor fraud, offshore accounts, and his planned flight to Costa Rica. Cloud Tech Consulting, Data Flow Services, and Advanced Tech Solutions are all companies owned by Richard Morrison. I showed business registration documents. These fake vendors received $3.2 million in payments that Richard authorized to himself. Bank records proved the fraudulent transfers. Richard has transferred stolen funds to accounts in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland International. Banking records showed his money laundering. He purchased a $2 million villa in Costa Rica and has plane tickets to leave tomorrow. Travel documents revealed his escape plan. Richard tried desperately to defend himself, but the evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. These accusations are fabricated, Richard claimed weakly. Sarah is trying to frame me for her team's crimes, the vendor registrations show. Your home address, I pointed out. You can't fake government business records. The offshore accounts have your signature on all transfer authorizations. Banking documents included his personal authorizations. Richard's desperation increased as board members reviewed the comprehensive evidence of his guilt. I can explain. Everything, Richard said frantically. There are legitimate business reasons for these transactions. Richard, you approved payments to companies you own, the board chairman stated. That's embezzlement by definition. As I concluded my presentation, FBI agents entered the conference room to arrest Richard based on my whistleblower report. Richard Morrison, you're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and embezzlement, the lead agent announced. We've been investigating based on evidence provided by Ms. Chen. The FBI explained their coordination with my whistleblower report. Richard was handcuffed in front of the board members while trying to maintain his innocence. This is all a misunderstanding, Richard said desperately. I'm the victim of false accusations. Mr. Morrison, we have your banking records and property purchases, the agent replied. The evidence is comprehensive. You have the right to remain silent. The agent continued reading Miranda rights while Richard realized his escape plan had failed. Richard's arrest in the Touchflow conference room marked the end of his criminal career and the beginning of his prosecution. Richard Morrison will face federal charges for stealing over $5 million from his own company, the FBI announced to shocked board members. The dramatic arrest vindicated my team completely while exposing Richard as the real criminal who tried to frame us. With Richard arrested and evidence of his guilt presented, the board immediately exonerated my accounting team and offered our jobs back. Sarah, your team has been completely vindicated, the chairman announced. All accusations against your team are withdrawn. Richard Morrison defrauded this company and attempted to frame innocent employees. The board formally acknowledged our innocence. Touchflow owes your team an apology and immediate reinstatement. The chairman offered our positions back with full back pay. We're also offering Sarah the position of chief financial officer. The board promoted me to replace Richard's financial oversight. Your investigation saved Touchflow from a massive fraud and prevented the destruction of 8 innocent careers. Board members praised my whistleblower actions. My team members were contacted immediately and offered their positions back with bonuses for the trauma they'd endured. Lisa, Mark, Jennifer, and the entire team are welcome back with full restoration of benefits. The company made complete restitution. Richard's false accusations will be publicly retracted. The board promised to restore our professional reputations. The vindication was complete. But the legal consequences for Richard were just beginning. Gorgeous souls, Richard's federal trial became a showcase of corporate crime when prosecutors used my evidence to convict him of stealing $5.2 million while I rebuilt Touchflow as the new CFO. Richard's federal trial lasted 6 weeks, with prosecutors using my comprehensive evidence to prove systematic embezzlement over 3 years. The defendant stole over $5.2 million through fraudulent vendor schemes while attempting to frame innocent employees. Prosecutors outlined the charges. Richard Morrison created fake companies and approved payments to himself while serving as CEO. The evidence was presented systematically. He planned to flee to Costa Rica with stolen funds after destroying 8 innocent careers. The prosecution showed his complete moral bankruptcy. I testified as the key witness, explaining how I discovered Richard's crimes and prevented his escape. Richard accused my team of theft to cover his own embezzlement. I told the jury we were scapegoats for his planned escape. My investigation saved $3.2 million in additional theft and prevented Richard from destroying more lives. I explained the broader impact. Richard was convicted on all counts: wire fraud, money laundering, embezzlement, and conspiracy charges. The jury finds Richard Morrison guilty of systematically defrauding his own company. The verdict was unanimous after minimal deliberation. Richard was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison plus restitution of $5.2 million to Touchflow. Your crimes violated the trust of employees, investors, and the business community, the judge noted during sentencing. As Touchflow's new CFO, I implemented comprehensive financial controls that prevented future fraud while rebuilding company culture. Under Sarah's leadership, Touchflow has become a model for corporate financial integrity. Industry publications featured our transformation. Employee morale has increased dramatically since Richard's removal. Staff surveys show the positive impact of ethical leadership. I hired back my entire original team with promotions and significant salary increases as recognition for their loyalty. Lisa is now Director of Accounts Payable. I promoted team members who'd suffered through Richard's false accusations. Mark became Senior Financial Analyst with oversight of vendor relationships. Trusted employees received advancement opportunities. Touchflow's revenue grew 60% in the year following Richard's removal as investor confidence returned. Companies want to work with Touchflow because of their commitment to integrity. New clients cited our ethical reputation. The attempted IPO was delayed but ultimately successful, with my financial controls impressing investors and regulators. Sarah Chen's leadership gives us complete confidence in Touchflow's financial management. Investment bankers praised our systems. Richard's attempt to destroy my career became the foundation for my promotion to executive leadership and industry recognition. Sarah Chen demonstrates that whistleblowers can triumph over corporate criminals. Business ethics organizations honored my courage. Exposing Richard's fraud saved Touchflow and protected innocent employees. Leadership awards recognized my actions. My team members became advocates for workplace integrity, sharing their experience to help other companies prevent fraud. We learned that standing together against false accusations protects everyone. My team became champions of ethical business practices. Touchflow established a whistleblower protection fund in recognition of my actions, encouraging other employees to report suspected crimes. Sarah's example shows that doing the right thing leads to professional success. The company culture transformed completely. Today, Touchflow is valued at $200 million with me as CFO, while Richard serves federal prison time for his crimes. Richard's greed destroyed his life while creating opportunities for ethical leaders. The contrast between our outcomes was stark. That's how you handle a CEO who tries to frame you for his own crimes, y'all. You investigate the truth, document everything, and let his own evidence destroy him. Sometimes the best revenge comes from simply exposing the truth and protecting innocent people from criminals. Richard thought he could steal millions and destroy 8 careers to cover his escape, but his greed led to his complete downfall. Never let false accusations destroy your confidence, gorgeous souls. Investigate the truth and let evidence speak louder than lies. My team's integrity and my investigation turned Richard's framed job into his own conviction while we achieved career success beyond our dreams. And gorgeous souls, if this story resonated with you, if you faced false accusations or workplace fraud, remember that truth and evidence always triumph over lies and theft. If you want to hear more stories like this, more tales of CEO justice, whistleblower triumph, and corporate crime consequences, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. Your support means everything to me. Beautiful souls, every like, every comment, every share helps me reach more people who need to hear these stories. So smash that subscribe button. Leave me a comment about your own experiences with workplace fraud and false accusations. And let's build a community of people who protect each other from corporate criminals. I'll see you gorgeous souls in the next story. And remember, never let criminals frame you for their crimes. Investigate the truth and always protect innocent people from false accusations.